How do producers decide what to produce and how much to produce? These questions are the crux of the seller's problem. Now, you likely haven't faced this problem, but you see the results of producers dealing with this problem every day. I'm Dr. Angela Doku, and this is Economics for Everyone. Now, consider your favorite bakery. The owner combines flour, sugar, butter, and all the necessary ingredients to produce the perfect pie. And when the pie has cooled after coming out of the oven, he sells it to a buyer. Now, this simple example demonstrates the three main components of the seller's problem. Notice the seller must know how to combine the inputs, which are ingredients, to make the output, which is pie. The seller must know how much it costs to produce the pie. And lastly, the seller must know how much he can sell his pie for. So these three elements describe the seller's problem and can be summarized as 1, making the goods, 2, the cost of doing business, and 3, the rewards of doing business. A firm is a business entity that produces and sells goods or services. A firm can consist of anywhere from one person to thousands of people and any number in between. But no matter the size, every firm must decide how to combine inputs to create outputs. In the short run, a firm has two types of inputs: those that can vary, such as labor, and those that are fixed in the short run, such as physical capital, like the building being used. Now, economists call the process of transforming inputs, such as ingredients and labor, needed to create the pie, to outputs, the pie itself, production. The relationship between the quantity of inputs used and the quantity of outputs produced is called the production function. So there's a lot more to unpack about the production function, which we'll cover in other videos. But for now, one of the key concepts is marginal product. And marginal product is the change in total output associated with using one more unit of input. So let's consider the bakery again. Now the owner decides to hire a new employee, and they go from producing 5 pies a day to 8. So the marginal product from hiring that worker is 3 pies. And this increase may have occurred because the owner and the new employee were able to specialize in different areas of the baking process. So if the owner just continued hiring workers, they would face the law of diminishing returns. So the law of diminishing returns states that successive increases in inputs eventually leads to less additional output. So for example, say the owner hires a third worker and the number of pies goes from 8 to 10. So here we can see the marginal product from this worker was only 2 instead of 3. So this could have occurred because the bakery doesn't have the space for the third worker. You can even imagine that adding too many workers would eventually decrease productivity when it got to the point where the bakery was too crowded. Now we'll discuss the second component of the seller's problem, the cost of doing business. The cost of production is what the firm must pay for its inputs. So just like inputs in the short run, a firm has 2 forms of costs: those that can vary, such as labor, and those that are fixed in the short run, such as the rent for the building, or more generally, physical capital. But in the long run, all costs are variable. Now, economists have developed ways to analyze a firm's costs, but for now, remember that economics is all about thinking on the margin, and costs are no different. So in this case, marginal costs are the change in the total cost associated with producing one more unit of output. So importantly, when marginal cost equals average total cost, the average total cost is at its minimum. The last component a firm must consider is the price at which a seller can sell its goods. So a firm makes money from selling its goods. And the revenue of a firm is the amount of money it brings in from the sale of its outputs. So revenue is determined by the price of the goods sold times the number of units sold. And marginal revenue is the change in total revenue associated with producing one more unit of output. Now, in a perfectly competitive market, sellers can sell as much as they want at the market price. And again, the market price is determined by the intersection of the market demand and market supply curves. And this is the price that an individual firm in a perfectly competitive market faces. And remember that in a perfectly competitive market, the marginal revenue is equal to the marginal cost. Now let's put it all together and talk about the good stuff, making money. The profits of a firm are equal to its revenues minus its costs. And the goal of a firm is to maximize its profits. Now, in another video, we'll discuss how a firm does this in more detail, but for now, let's consider the marginal revenue and marginal cost of a bakery operating in a perfectly competitive market. So imagine the price of a cupcake is $1.50, and you want to produce 29 cupcakes. To produce this last cupcake, it costs $1.25. So that is the marginal cost. So can the bakery increase its profits? The answer is yes. If it produces one more cupcake, revenue increases by $1.50, which is greater than the $1.25 it costs to produce. So this is a general rule. If a firm can produce another unit of output at a marginal cost less than the market price, so in other words, the marginal revenue, it should do so. So this process continues until marginal cost equals marginal revenue. And that's how a firm maximizes profits. So the seller's problem is made up of lots of moving parts, which include making goods, the cost of doing business, and the rewards of doing business. And each of these components needs a more detailed description, but hopefully this video gave you some intuition, because economics is for everyone.